Hi friends, today we are painting Misty Mountain. So this is the first painting in my book and I hope that you will enjoy it with me. I am only going to paint this one using Payne's Grey. So you can pick any color you'd like. I quite like Payne's Grey. I think it's one of my favorite colors. So I'm doing a gradient here. Just a very wet gradient. I'm painting it wet on dry so that I can sort of have a bit more control over it. And I want it to be slightly darker at the top and then more water as I go towards the bottom. So you really want that gradient effect of darker at the top and then adding more water as you go down. So continue working it, continue adding some water, having a bit more control using wet on dry, and paint it all the way to the bottom. Okay, now I use an old hair dryer and I just dry this as good as I can. You can also step away from it and come back later. So I'm going in with my first layer of mountains and I'm using the same mixture as what I did for my gradient. So I haven't added more color, I haven't made it any darker. It's exactly the same color. And what I'm doing here is I'm basically just doing that mountain shape and then I am following that gradient all the way down. So this is really very beginner friendly, using one color only and just having a play with those gradients. Now, when you have your mountains, you sort of want the gradients to come through because that will leave, um, leave it looking more like a misty mountain. So I dry this step. I will show you just now what I mean. So I dry this step nicely again, making sure it's very nice and dry. Now you can also not dry it completely and have a bit more of a bleed if you want a softer edge. So now when I go into my mountain, uh, you will see this next layer. I've made it a little bit darker than before and the gradient of the back mountain is just coming through a tiny bit. So it gives the idea of misty mountains, having those valleys in between the mountains. So slightly darker than before. I've added a bit more color to my mixture and now I'm just painting that gradient or taking it all the way down just with water, and then we dry that area completely again. You can use a nice big brush for this. Don't overthink your mountains too much and just have some fun with it. So drying it completely and now I'm adding a bit more color. So you can see my color palette here on the right hand side and you'll see that I have a blob of Payne's Grey there in the corner and it's actually dried already because I'm using these 9 colors throughout my book. So it's dried up already and um, this way I can just wet more paint, then use it as I need it. Um, and you can also use it from a tube, you can use it from a palette and actually mix into it from the cakes, mix into your palette. But I like having just that blob in the corner, and when I need a more pigmented paint, I just get some more from the corner. Well, I'm saying a corner. It's round, but you know what I mean. Okay, so another mountain is set down and it's painted and it is a gradient all the way down and I am drawing that layer again. So I'm going to do 2 more layers. So now I'm adding a bit more color again. So every time you do a mountain, you're adding a bit more color, making it a bit more pigmented so that it's a bit darker and just painting that next level again. And as you can see, as I mentioned before, having that gradient in your mountain makes the valleys stand out a bit more, so you can see it's lighter towards where your valley would be, and then the next mountain is darker than the previous one. So now we're just drawing this layer, and then we're going to do the very last one, and then you just have these beautiful distant mountains, very light and soft, gradient in the sky, and your front mountains. I think I'm just going to darken this mountain, this layer, a little bit more before I do my foreground, just to have a bit more of a contrast. So adding a bit more color to this one. And then doing that gradient all the way down, adding water as I go. Yeah, I think that's better. Okay, let's try this one, and then let's go in for the last layer. The last layer I want to be highly pigmented, lots of color to it, and it's just here in the foreground, nice and dark. Thank you for following along. I hope that you will enjoy this series all from my book. I'll put all the details in the description below. And happy painting!